Hey guys, welcome back to HOA Karen Stories. In this video, a homeowner association built an entire HOA neighborhood on my land, unaware that I'm the owner of the property. This backfired completely. Today's XXL title story is from r/advice on Reddit. It starts like this. Hey everybody, I'm a little bit worried about an HOA near me and I'm looking for some advice. A little backstory about me to get things started. I'm a 42-year-old woman living in South Africa. I come from a generation of farmers. I'm currently the third generation owning this farmland and run the entire 200 acres of it by myself. Once my father died and it was passed on to me, things started out a little bit difficult. I knew how to take care of a farm, but running it and taking over the things my father used to do was where it became a little bit tricky for me. My dad had hired a lot of help because 200 acres is impossible for one person to cover and do everything without things falling apart. I was able to keep the staff who already knew how to help with crops and animals, so that made life much easier for me. It turned out I knew more about business than I thought I did by just learning through watching. I went to college and got a degree in agricultural engineering. I felt like a lot of people assume farmers are uneducated or even unintelligent. Well, personally, I think that is why some people believe that we would be easy targets to go after. Using my education, I actually started to make some changes to the farm to help things go a bit smoother. My father had been using the same old equipment, believing that if things were not broken, then you should not fix them. I was able to redesign our entire irrigation system so that it wasted less water and watered the entire field of crops more effectively. The other thing I did was invest some money into changing our milking system with the cows. He was a firm believer about taking care of all the animals by hand. While I agree that some things are important to do by hand, machines can really help a lot. I want to make sure that this land is protected and prospers for a long time. While my brother does not want to work on the farm for physical reasons, he still helps with some financial stuff, and I can tell my nephews are very interested, and I hope that one day I can leave the farm in their good hands. I feel connected to this place, and without it, I would be totally lost. Not just from the income, but more almost spiritually. My family had been on the land since the 1800s, and not having it would just make me feel like I had a hole in my heart. I would not give this place up willingly, but I had a run-in that almost cost me to lose it for good. I guess I need to mention that the land here is not all farms and open land like it used to be 200 years ago when my family got it. Some of the area has changed to be more residential in a way that is good for me because less local competition and stores and other places being a lot more convenient for me to get to. Well, the disadvantage is that the neighborhood around here seems to be a little bit on the bougie side, and that does not always fit with a huge farm. They got an HOA, and even before I met her, I had heard that this HOA Karen was a total hard ass. She used to work in real estate, and rumors say that she used some pretty nasty tactics to get her clients their home or force a price hike. Not the kind of woman that follows the golden rule, if you know what I mean. I heard the rest of the board under her is not much better, and despite how much interaction I had with her, I had very little with them. The fact that they seem to back her up is enough for me to assume they are just as nasty as she is. I also heard that the HOA president was just meant to be a bit of a stepping stone for her, basically to get her name out there to everybody before she decided to run for a higher and actual political position. And by the way guys, I'm curious if that ever happened before, that someone basically was a tyrannical HOA president and then ran for public office. That is definitely an interesting career. Anyway, what I will say for now is that she certainly knows how to act like some of the more sketchy people in that field. Even before I met her, I knew that she had an issue with the farm. People around here talk, and honestly, I figured that it was just a lot of talk and complaining. She did not mention any exact plans at the time, but just felt like complaining about the farm making the entire place look lost to time. Talking about how, without it, how many more homes could be built and things like that. Obviously, the idea of tearing down burial plots dating back over 200 years did not even cross her mind. There's one word that I thought of this woman before I even met her, and that was greed. Things went downhill as her talk of hating the farm started to move towards what she was wanting to do with the land, making it seem like she was talking about far in the future at first, maybe thinking I was the last of the family that would run it anyway. Well, as months went on though, I knew that something bad was brewing based on what I was being told she was saying regarding my property. A lot of the talk was about her spouting that the area needed to be cleaned up and the area's property value to increase, making notes like before about my farm just lowering the value of the other homes in the area as if a farm is some contagion that spreads. It's been the same 200 acres the entire time though, and I don't think the fences were getting any ideas about just moving themselves magically. Trust me, if I had magic, I would be doing a lot better things with it, like making certain animal messes vanish on their own. The one part that was starting to actually scare me though was that she was apparently promising potential investors that she was gonna build some giant luxury properties and that they were gonna have an entire 200 acres of land to work with. There is no other open land around, so it was clear she was talking about my own farm but did not have the guts to just come out and say so yet. While I was waiting for this entire thing to sort itself out, summer was coming in fast and that just seemed to lead to an entirely new host of problems. I knew that I had to make big sales with my crops and animals since farms like mine don't do as well as they used to in the past. That's part of the reason these areas are becoming more suburban and there's that huge transition. I like the fact that my country is doing well financially and people have money to be able to go out and buy homes and have a family. I just wish that the change in the farming industry did not have to be so negative compared to that. Independent farms have been struggling more all over the world and I knew that. I just had faith that if I kept improving things and making small changes, I could stay afloat. I was not in the negative or anything, I just knew these investors had a lot more money than I did. It also caused another fight with the HOA and them trying to use something against me. During the summer here, there are some water conservation restrictions. People in the HOA get upset because it means they cannot water their lawns and keep them as perfect as they want to. My farm, though, is not forced into those same restrictions since it's not really a residence. It also happens to be the best harvest season for me, so I'm able to conserve some water. It just didn't seem to be enough to make the HOA not think I was out here breaking rules and doing whatever I wanted. I am planning on spending summer harvesting crops, selling what I could, and doing some preserving of things so they could keep longer. I sell those at farmers markets, and people did like the fact that they could get some local pickled veggies or even jams from me. Locals were really the best small-scale market I had, and if the HOA turned them against me, I could end up in a lot of trouble. The last thing I want to mention is that the record system here is not the best. That's the main reason I was worried ahead of time if the HOA Karen was gonna try and pull something on me. At some point they started to keep better records of property transfers and put those into the computer at the deeds office. Well, since my farm was way before that and never had a solid transfer, I knew the records might not exist anymore. Combine that with the fact that a lot of the property lines had been rewritten to change from farms to residential, which just made the entire thing more complicated. So basically, I want to ask for some advice on what to do because I'm a little scared the HOA is about to do something. I can almost feel it inside of me that something is gonna happen. If it doesn't, and this is my only post, I'll be happy, but I have a feeling that I'll be back soon because of them. And then someone in the comments said, holy crap, this HOA lady sounds like a nightmare. Listen, as someone who's dealt with power-hungry HOA presidents before, you need to get ahead of the situation ASAP. First thing, secure your property records. Even if the computerized records are spotty, there should be a paper deed somewhere in the deeds office archives. Hire a property lawyer who specializes in agricultural land yesterday. The fact that this HOA president is already talking to investors about your 200 acres is a massive red flag. Second, document everything, any interactions with her or the HOA board, take notes with dates and times. If legal in South Africa, record the conversations too. Save any letters or notices they sent to you. The water usage thing is just her fishing for every violation. Your farm is likely zoned agricultural and not residential, so the HOA probably has zero jurisdiction over your property. But verify this with your lawyer. Don't let this woman intimidate you. You've got generations of history and legal ownership on your side. Stand your ground, but do it with proper legal backing. Good luck and please update us. And yeah guys, if you would be in this situation and had to go against an HOA, potentially at least, while having a farm property that dates back hundreds of years, what would you do in this situation? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoy the HOA farmer stories, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads and like the video to help me with the damn YouTube algorithm. The next comment said, this situation is all too familiar and you're right to be concerned, but don't panic just yet. First off, HOAs typically only have jurisdiction over properties that are specifically part of their covenant. If your farm predates the residential development, which it clearly does by like 150 plus years, there's almost no way that your property is subject to their rules unless someone in your family explicitly agreed to join the HOA at some point. The fact that she's talking to investors about your land when she has no ownership of it could potentially be fraud. Document everything she does and says. By the way, props on the irrigation redesign and modernizing the milking system. That kind of adaptation is exactly why family farms survive. Stay strong and don't let them bully you. Your land is not theirs to take. And now guys, we have an update to the story, and actually it's one of many, so please watch until the end to get the entire story. Well guys, it's me again, and it turns out I was right that the HOA was planning something big. I just did not expect it to explode the way that it did. Also, thanks to the comments letting me know that I was not being paranoid and was just justified in worrying about this HOA. So it only took a week into the real heat of summer and a day after I started harvesting that I got a notice from the HOA. I had a few of these from them before, mostly complaining about my water usage or my animals causing a smell. Like I said before though, I was allowed to water my crops and I honestly cannot help that animals go to the bathroom. Well, figuratively I guess. I clean it up, but I mean farms can smell sometimes. It is part of life. This notice though was not about any of that and instead wanted to inform me that they had completed the sale of 75 acres of land, of my land, to a luxury developer. I think it went on to talk about the new homes that would be built and praising all of them, but I was not paying that part of the notice much attention. Instead, I was focused on the part where it showed a map of where the 75 acres were, and it was all on my property. It was like they took a chunk of my land, if you can call nearly half my farm a chunk, and then sold it. I expected it to go on about what kind of cut they were giving me, even though it wouldn't have made me any less angry. I don't think I could have gotten more angry at that point, the more that I kept reading. They were demanding that I remove anything within that area of previous public space, or the developer had the right to destroy it during construction. This part of my land has a barn, a horse stable, and a ton of crops that were just about ready for harvest. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now I'm just extremely thankful that my family's graves were not on that area. You cannot just move these things, and to make it worse, she was claiming that they were going to be starting within the week, so I really had to get started moving things. It went on more about if I didn't comply that potential fines could be given or even legal action taken against me. I think I was so red in the face and steaming that I couldn't even think clearly at that point. I had zero clue in this situation what to do or even who to call. I did not open my mail until it was night, so no kind of offices were open. The best I could do was call my brother and have him try to calm me down a bit. He told me that we would get things sorted out and that he would always look for and find me a good lawyer that specialized in things like farms and property theft. Another good suggestion from a comment in my first post actually, sometimes it can be really nice to have an older sibling that can not only have your back but be a person to calm me down. I was able to at least get some sleep and figured that I had a few days and would be able to figure things out. A few days was not the case though, as at 5 AM, when I always get up, I already saw that there were some construction trucks and people setting up barriers to section of the area that the HOA supposedly sold. And just to clarify here, apparently that is the section on OP's land. The private land that the HOA apparently sold without OP's permission. Anyway, the fence was already gone at that point, and I was a mixture of a million emotions. I had staff that were arriving around that same time, totally confused as to what was going on, and I had to try and explain it to them quickly, as I wanted to go and speak to the crew as soon as possible. Mainly, I told them that I would handle things and to just do what they normally do, but avoid that area of the farm until after I spoke to these people. At the very least, I knew I was going to need to be let in because of the animals. Not to mention that I had a lot of crops, and without harvesting those and selling them, I would end up losing so much money I would be in the negative. One of the machines they had was clearly a bulldozer that could cut through and destroy that entire area of crops, ruining them and everything. I quickly sent a text to my brother saying that they were here, but I knew he would not be awake for a few hours, so I was on my own for now. I went to the guy that seemed to be in charge of the crew and told him to make them turn off the trucks and the machines, yelling at them that they had to stop and I had good crops and animals on this land that I had to take care of, telling him no less than 5 times that there was a mistake and I owned the farm, including this land. I was met with just as much anger and rage with them, screaming that I was trespassing and needed to get out of the work area, claiming that if I even tried to touch a crop or go into a building, I would be forcibly removed. I started screaming that the animals were still in there and I needed to get them out before they would destroy things. All he had to say was that the barn demo was not until tomorrow and they had plans for the animal removal, so I had nothing to worry about. I had a lot to say about this though. Me, nothing to worry about? You are about to destroy thousands of dollars of my income and the only thing you can say is that I have nothing to worry about. I don't remember much of what else he was saying, as I was just gone in my anger. I do remember trying to reason with him and calming down a bit, asking to at least remove the animals and harvest the crops before they did anything. I was again refused though and told that I had to leave because this was not my land and taking anything from it would be stealing. I still refused to leave though and planted myself the best I could right in front of the bulldozers to try and stop him from destroying my crops. He ended up calling the cops on me and started telling them how they had permits to clear the land and that I was getting in the way. I tried to explain to the police that I owned this land and it was illegally sold without my knowledge. Again, I was refusing to move despite the police telling me that I had to because the crew had proof and I didn't. The crew leader was telling the police that he wanted me arrested for trespassing and finally the officer just leveled with me a little bit. He told me that if I didn't get off the property, he would be forced to arrest me and I couldn't do anything from inside a jail cell. If I got off of the property though, then I would be able to file a property dispute report and he could put a hold on everything. Basically, a big pause button until a judge could look at the dispute and see if it needed to be taken further or if they could verify the land belonging to one party or another. And by the way, Ripe Stars, imagine if there was a mute button for entitled Karens. That is really something that needs to be invented. Maybe that could be one of the ways that AI can be used for good for once. Anyway, I took that route and was told that I better get a lawyer right away because them having papers and me not was not gonna look good for anything. I know that some of you might think I handle things poorly and I wouldn't disagree with you. I let get emotions in the way as I was taken by surprise. I've been told since I was about 4 years old that the one thing I got from my father was his temper. So I knew I had to rein that in. My brother was able to find me a lawyer who in addition to the pause was gonna get a judge to grant permission for the animals to be removed. Since the land dispute involved them, they would need to go to a third party. Basically, stay at another farm until things get all settled. At least they were being taken care of. But I could not harvest the crops yet, which was also right because it was corn and it can sit a while without being ruined. That's actually though why I don't harvest all at once and instead do it in smaller patches, so I don't need to be overwhelmed with a lot at once. That did not mean that I was happy about any of this, but it did mean at least that I was safe for now. The HOA meanwhile had a meeting and since it was an open one, I decided to go make sure that I was not gonna miss anything. Plus, I wanted to make it clear to everybody what they were doing, something I did not even need to do because once they saw me, they brought up the issue right away. Painting it in their favor, they told people that there was a delay in the luxury homes and other plans because of me. And of course, I claimed that they had no right to the land, but they came prepared. They were open and willing to show me documents that they had. They were transferring documents with signatures that I knew were forged. It was showing the land was signed over to them by my father before he died. With it was a notary stamp, which I later learned was done by the spouse of the woman who was the HOA treasurer. Something was really fishy here, and I knew that if I was going to get one over on them, I was going to also need to be a little bit sneaky. So my next stop was the local deeds office, where I learned a lot of things that were extremely outdated. Paperwork about a farm sold in the 1800s was not readily available in their digital system, and they did not even know if it existed anymore at all. It was beyond what their current staff could help with, but I was welcome to access the old physical records to try and find something. It was beyond what I knew, so I took another route. I hired a historian and explained to him the situation that was going on here. I wanted him to try and find anything he could relating to my property as far back as he could get it, specifically focusing on land grants and property sales. Well, he could not promise anything, but I would not consider it a waste of money, even if he didn't. My brother was helping a lot with the lawyer and he turned out to be really good. He mainly worked with land rights, and while he didn't work with farms exclusively, he did have some experience. It turns out a lot of farmers don't agree on where one ends and the other begins. The historian got back to me, and while I thought he might have immediately found the record and been able to help with that, he found something else that he wanted me to see. It was a very old map that he found deep in the local library's basement. I have no idea how it ended up there, and despite kind of wanting to know now, it wasn't something I thought of asking at that exact moment. I might go back and ask him later if he knows. This was not just a normal map though, because it had all the farms laid out in it along with the last name of the current owners. This was back when my great-grandpa must have bought the land because of the date and the fact that it was his name. None of that was the important part though. So the map had lines showing the property that was bought by each farmer. The land he bought back then was not the 200 acres that I knew to be the farm. Instead, it was actually 500 acres and spread to where it covered most of that HOA development. This included the HOA president's own house and most of the other board members as well. The historian also found out that in the 1970s there was some kind of issue where the information got wiped and they had to base things on how they were in that moment. The issue causing us to think that we only own those 200 acres. It also caused land titles to not transfer properly. Now, I was not only fighting for my land back, but if I could prove my family still owned the original farm layout, I would basically own that entire neighborhood. The stakes were now higher than ever before, and the fact that I could get some massive revenge on that HOA president really gave me some extra fuel. While this seems like something that might happen at the end of the story, I still have an entire trial to deal with, as well as the HOA president going a step further to cause more problems for me. The next wonderful person that I met on my journey was an old woman that used to work at the deeds office. When I say old, this woman was probably in her 80s, but still walking around and doing amazing. This woman was apparently one of the few that did not like how records were being transferred and not so great at using the computer anyway. She remembered a lot of things that nobody knew the first time I went to the office. The historian told her what was going on and she wanted to give me the info that she had. I tried to pay her and everything, but she refused and just wanted to help out of the goodness in her heart. These are the type of people I wish existed more instead of these HOA board snobs. She actually got me in touch with a bunch of people and made me realize that I needed a wider net than just my brother and a lawyer if I was gonna win this fight. Well, in addition to my lawyer, I got another one that worked for free who would work with him, this one being an environmental lawyer. I was also put in touch with a larger regional deeds office that might have records that my local one did not. I hope what I have right now though is enough to take on the HOA. And then someone in the comments wrote, "You need to make sure to keep your cool, losing your temper might make you look like the guilty one." OP said, "Thanks, I know I need to stay calm during all of this no matter how hard it is. I have not blown up again since that first time, so I consider it good progress. Instead, I just make sure to throw myself into work when I think I might lose it again." Update number 2 to the story. So once again, thanks to everyone for the nice comments and advice you gave me on the last part. I know it's been a couple of weeks, so I want to make another post with some updates. It turns out that the regional deeds office had records that mine didn't, which might be a total game changer for things to come. The biggest thing of all was that I got my hands on the actual title claims. Got things notarized and made sure it was good and proved that I owned the land before I submitted it. I actually wanted them to submit their phony claims because once it was in public record, my lawyer could start to analyze that it was fake. Two really big things were the cause of knowing the entire thing was fake, the smaller one being that my dad's name on the paperwork was wrong. See, every single person thought that his name was Robert, people called him that, his own parents called him that, and the thing was that legally, for some reason, his name was not Robert, it was Patrick. Now, I have zero clue why this was the case, and from things he told me, believe it was a hospital error. They never fixed it though, so his legal name was Patrick, and all his documents had to be in that name. This forged document though was signed by Robert. The second and more glaring issue was that the notarization had a teeny tiny problem, mainly being that it was notarized for a date after he died. Those two things alone I knew would be enough to throw everything into question and show that they clearly did not have the rights to our land. The bigger issue though was trying to convince a judge that this was willful fraud and not them just making an error. The HOA president, I guess, got bored or tired of waiting. I personally think she's just being extremely cocky and thinking that she will win in court no matter what. She ended up disobeying the court's orders and bulldozed the land anyway. All of my corn got destroyed, and the fact that they didn't tear down the barn building yet is nothing short of a miracle. This is just the start of the HOA taking some kind of offensive measures against me though. They filed a harassment claim against me as well, claiming that I was stalking the HOA before and after the meetings and sending them messages that they conveniently did not save, saying some pretty threatening things. They also decided to weaponize media. The thing I sometimes hate about media is that you can use advertisement funds to basically run a smear campaign to ruin someone's life. They wanted to paint a very clear picture of me. They wanted people to think that I was a crazy person that was stopping community progress for the sake of it. That I hated the modern world and was some kind of Amish person that wanted to destroy people's cars and pull down the electrical grid. I don't think actual Amish people believe in that kind of thing though. I also found out that they were going door to door telling people I was mentally unstable. Not to buy anything from me because I supposedly add poison and other things to products. They were really trying to just destroy me and put me out of business no matter the cost. My name is being dragged so far into the mud that it looks like a pig rolled around in it. I must be the only person in the world who got excited for the fact that court was finally about to start though. My lawyer explained that given the complexity of the land dispute and the potential criminal elements involved, this would need to go to regional court rather than just a simple hearing. The first court session was a preliminary hearing to determine the validity of the competing land claims and whether there was enough evidence of fraud to warrant criminal charges being filed separately. Both sides would present their documentation and the judge would then make an initial ruling on the emergency injunction stopping construction. My lawyer had prepared extensively, organizing all our historical documents, the surveys, and the evidence of the forged paperwork. The HOA's legal team looked confident when they walked in, but I noticed they seemed less prepared than I expected. Maybe they were still relying on their fake documents working. The proceedings started with both sides presenting their land ownership claims. Again, the HOA didn't know that I had submitted the authentic historical land titles to the deeds office and didn't bother looking it up before coming to court with their forged paperwork. Just to recap though, their papers showed that my father signed over the farm using the wrong legal name and were dated after his death. When questioned by my lawyer, the HOA's attorney tried to play this off as clerical errors, claiming the name was a common nickname issue and the date was a simple mistake that they could correct. My papers showed the unbroken chain of historical land records from the 1800s through 1933, proving I owned not just my 200 acres but potentially the other 300 acres that encompassed much of the current HOA development. The judge seemed very interested in the historical survey maps and spent considerable time reviewing them. It would have been a straightforward document fight, but then something unexpected happened. The person who had notarized the HOA's fake document, the husband of the HOA treasurer, was called as a witness. Under oath and facing potential perjury charges, he completely fell apart within minutes of questioning. He admitted that he had been paid to backdate and notarize documents he knew were fraudulent. When pressed by the prosecutor, who had joined the case due to the criminal implications, he revealed that this was not the first time he had done this for the HOA. The courtroom was dead silent as he detailed the entire scheme. At this point, the judge called for a recess and met with both legal teams. When court resumed, the judge made it clear that while this hearing was about property ownership, the criminal aspects would be referred to the prosecutor's office for separate charges. The judge ruled that based on the authentic historical documentation and the admitted forgery, the 75 acres in dispute clearly belonged to me. However, the larger question of the additional 300 acres would require a separate property hearing, as it involved complex issues of adverse possession and whether the land had been effectively abandoned by my family over the decades. The judge also noted that evidence presented suggested a conspiracy between the HOA president and the developer, what appeared to be a kickback arrangement where she would receive money from home sales in exchange for facilitating the land grab. So this information was also forwarded to prosecutors. The notary was advised by the court that while his cooperation was noted, he should expect criminal charges to be filed against him for his role in the document forgery. The judge made no promises about leniency, only that his cooperation would be considered during sentencing if he was convicted. With the immediate land ownership dispute resolved in my favor, I was able to get the construction injunction made permanent and regain access to my property. But this was just the beginning. I still faced the harassment charges the HOA had filed against me, and I was preparing my own lawsuits against them for the destroyed crops, defamation, and the illegal sale of my land. Plus, there was still the question of those additional 300 acres to resolve in a future hearing. My lawyer warned me that the criminal case against the HOA would likely take months to resolve, and the civil matters could drag on even longer, but at least I had my farm back and could start repairing the damage they had caused. Right now, I'm actually in the middle of all this legal drama, and I wanted to wait before updating, but I still felt like it would be too long, so this post won't actually have all the court outcomes, but I promise that very soon I'll be able to let you all know how things turned out. Well, hopefully in my favor. Commenter, make sure you add a defamation lawsuit against the HOA to everything, since they spread all those lies for the purpose of damaging your business. OP said, I didn't even think of that. I'm going to ask my lawyer if it's too late to do that. Another person then said in the comments, please let this HOA go down. I don't think I've hated a person I've never met before more than the president here. OP said, thanks, I'll do my best. Another person in the comments said, what about the cows, did you get them back? OP, yes, I was able to get my cows all back, so thankfully I did not end up losing them because of the HOA. Now, update 3 to the story. For what I think is the last time, I want to thank everybody who commented and is supporting me. I don't know what I would have done if the thoughts from the first post and beyond were not this positive. I promised you all an update after court, and I'm sorry that it's taken almost a year since my last post. The legal process has been much longer and more complex than I expected, but it's finally over and I can share how everything turned out. And by the way guys, if you enjoy these long HOA stories, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. Thank you so much, it really helps me tremendously. So anyway, after the initial property hearing established that I owned my original 200 acres, things moved slowly through the legal system. The prosecutor took several months to build the criminal case against the HOA board members. They had to investigate not just the forged documents, but also the financial records showing the kickback scheme between the HOA president and the developer. The criminal charges were formally filed about 4 months after our initial court hearing. The HOA board members were charged with document forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and corruption. The developer was also charged as part of the conspiracy. Rather than go through a lengthy criminal trial, most of the HOA board members decided to accept plea bargains. The process took another few months as lawyers negotiated the terms. The HOA president, being the ringleader, got the harshest sentence, which was 3 years in prison, plus heavy fines and restitution. The treasurer got 2 years since the kickback money had gone through her accounts, and she was deeply involved in the financial fraud too. 2 other board members who had been very involved got 18 months each, though one of them received mostly probation due to cooperating early with the prosecutors. The notary, who was the treasurer's husband, got 1 year in prison for his role in the document forgery. I'll admit the sentences might seem light to some people, but my lawyer explained that white-collar crime like this rarely gets the maximum penalties, especially for first-time offenders who cooperate with authorities and show remorse. Furthermore, the harassment charges they had filed against me were dropped early in the process. Once the prosecutor saw the evidence of their fraud, it became clear that they were just trying to intimidate me. As for my civil lawsuit against them for crop damage and defamation, we ended up settling out of court about 8 months into the process. The HOA's insurance covered most of the damages, and I received substantial compensation for my destroyed crops and the lost business. So the big question about the additional 300 acres took over a year to fully resolve. The municipal authorities had to do extensive research into the property records going back to the 1800s, and well, after all that investigation, they confirmed that due to the record-keeping errors in the 1970s, my family had never actually lost the legal title to that land. Here's where things got interesting though, and I'll admit I was not feeling very charitable after everything the HOA and many of the residents had put me through. The legal situation was that while I owned the land, the homeowners had some protection as good faith purchasers, but only if they could prove that they had no knowledge of the title issues and had acted in good faith. Here's the thing though, during the criminal investigation it came out that many of the residents had been actively supporting the HOA's harassment campaign against me. Some had even participated participated in spreading the lies about my farm products being poisoned, others had signed petitions supporting their HOA's plan to acquire my land for development. A few had even donated money to the HOA's legal fund to fight me in court. And well, my lawyer discovered that this level of participation in the scheme could potentially void their good faith protection, especially since they'd been informed about the land dispute early on but chose to side with the HOA anyway. I decided to take a different approach though than the court had suggested. So instead of offering everyone the option to stay, I gave them an ultimatum. They had 90 days to purchase their land at premium market rates, since they'd always claimed it was such a desirable area, or they would need to sell their homes and leave. The prices I set were high but not unreasonable for the area they had insisted was so valuable. However, a lot of them suddenly couldn't afford what they claimed their neighborhood was worth. About half of the residents decided they could not or would not pay the premium prices I was asking, and those people had to sell their homes and move. And here's the part that felt like justice to me. Because of the legal uncertainty and the requirement to sell quickly, most of them had to sell at a significant loss. The same people who had looked down on my smelly farm and supported stealing my land were now forced to move to less expensive areas. I basically sold more than half of the HOA neighborhood land to a development company that specialized in sustainable, eco-friendly housing. The new development would be smaller, more environmentally conscious, and definitely more expensive than what was there before. The proceeds from these sales gave me more money than I knew what to do with. I'm finally at peace with how everything turned out. My farm is doing better than ever, and I was able to use some of the settlement money and income from the land arrangements to upgrade more of my equipment and expand into some new crop varieties. I've got more grazing space for the animals now, which is nice, and most importantly for the future, I've established an agricultural land trust for my core farming land. This legal protection means that no matter what happens, the land can never be developed or sold off for non-agricultural purposes. When I eventually pass it on to my nephews, who are already showing serious interest in farming, they will inherit both the protected farmland and a substantial real estate empire. The former HOA president is still in prison, and I heard she's been trying to appeal her conviction. Good luck with that though, the evidence was overwhelming and now she has lost everything. Her political career is dead, her house is demolished, and she'll be getting out of prison to nothing. Sometimes I drive by where her house used to be, now a luxury mansion worth 3 times what hers was, and I smile. The developer who was working with the HOA got what he deserved too. Not only did they go to prison, but his company went bankrupt and he lost everything. I bought his equipment and machinery at the bankruptcy auction for pennies on the dollar. Now I am using his own tools to run the successful operation he tried to destroy. I'll be honest, I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. Going through this experience taught me that sometimes being nice and reasonable just makes you a target. The old me might have felt bad about destroying people's lives. The new me remembers that they tried to destroy mine first. The few residents who managed to stay had to pay premium prices for their land, and they damn well better appreciate it. They know exactly what happens to people who cross me now. They respect property lines, don't dare to complain about farm operations, and several of them have become some of my best customers, paying top dollar for my produce. As for the ones who got forced out, they are living in smaller houses in worse neighborhoods now, probably telling anyone who will listen about the crazy farmer who took their homes. Good though, let them serve as a warning to others about what happens when you mess with someone's livelihood. Also, the money from selling half the neighborhood has made me one of the wealthiest landowners in the region. I'm no longer just a farmer, I'm a real estate mogul with a farming operation. I own luxury developments, commercial properties, and premium agricultural land. For anyone else dealing with HOA bullies or people trying to steal your property, don't just fight back, fight to win and make them pay. Document everything, get the best lawyers money can buy, and when you have the chance to destroy them, just take it. In my case, their illegal scheme to steal my land ended up giving me theirs, their money, and their future. Don't settle for just getting your property back, make them lose everything they tried to take from you, and then some. And yeah guys, please don't forget to subscribe if you want more daily stories, otherwise I will see you again tomorrow.